Hello, and welcome to the very first edition of Whale FM, The Investors. My name is WhaleShark, and this is the first installment of many more interviews to come, where we ask the audience and ask the important questions to the founders and investors in the space that are making huge waves in NFTs. I'm honored and excited today to have Justin Banon, co-founder of the Boson Protocol, a project that has been making some significant waves in the space with their mission to connect smart contracts with the real-world commerce and its data. This show has a two-part format with some questions from myself and many more from the audience for the next hour. So please feel free to post your questions in the Whale Discord stream text, and we'll definitely be picking up on those. Welcome to the show, Justin, and thank you for agreeing to come on.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
It's truly our pleasure. I know that we've spoken about 2 months ago and really enjoyed that conversation with you, as well as with your team, in terms of helping me understand how Bozum was literally going to change the world of commerce in not only NFTs, but in the metaverse as a whole. So I'm very excited for this interview. So before we begin and getting into the nitty gritty, could I ask you to introduce yourself and your team, who is behind Boson Protocol, and what is the experience and expertise of the team?
Yeah, sure. I'm Justin Banon. My background is I started out doing a physics degree. Ended up working for a company called Priority Pass, which was like a company selling airport lounge visits as paper and plastic vouchers. And I, kind of got heavily into digital business models and grew that business from like 50 million turnover to $1 billion revenue digital voucher platform. I then got into blockchain. And had this idea of what happens if we represent real world products and services as like kind of what we were thinking of as like blockchain vouchers at the time. Started doing the second master's in blockchain. And that's where I met my co-founder, who's a tech co-founder, Gregor Baroza. He was teaching a couple of those tech classes. And we really together started developing this concept of Boson Protocol. For a while it was just the two of us. And at the heart of Boson Protocol is a core piece of game theory that we invented. Now that game theory is actually being worked on by one of the world's top algorithmic game theorists, Dr. Akaki Mamagashvili, who's on the team. And we've just got this kind of stellar team of tech and token engineering. So, we've got Sebnam, who teaches tokenized value flows for token engineering community. We've got Anish Mohammed, architect in our protocol, who's worked on like maybe a dozen protocols, including Ripple and Ocean. We've got people like Marina Markozic on governance, and just this sort of incredible team designing and building this tokenized ecosystem for things.
That is amazing. It sounds like a crack ace team that you have put together.
And
I know that is. Do you guys work? I mean, given COVID and everything today, I imagine that you have a very decentralized structure and everyone works all over the world.
Yeah, I've been running distributed businesses for over a decade, and so there's no change there. I mean, the only thing is, normally every couple of months we'd all get together, and so we can't wait to do that. And I think Berlin will probably be the venue for a big kind of blockchain kind of rendezvous.
Fantastic. So I think the main question, and I know while a lot of people who have run very deep down the rabbit hole in the space have heard of Boson Protocol and are very excited in terms of what it's going to bring to metaverse commerce, or even just the merger of real world and digital commerce. For the audience that have not had the honor or the ability to understand what Boson Protocol is yet, can you roughly explain what is Boson Protocol and how does it actually work?
Sure. So the vision of Boson Protocol is to enable a decentralized commerce ecosystem. And we do that by funding and enabling the development of this sort of stack of specialist applications that will sort of disrupt and democratize commerce. And Boson Protocol is this kind of foundational primitive in that stack. So what Boson does is it uses a game theoretic mechanism to automate the sort of redemption of between digital value and a physical item, and it uses basically game theory that's encoded within an NFT to do that. So that's a kind of at the quite operational level of the function it performs. But really, the second part of the innovation is that we, instead of being sort of like a platform or a widget, we're actually a tokenized ecosystem. So we're all about creating tokenizing real world items and having them actually as ERC20s that will then be able to flow across crypto and DeFi infrastructure.
Very cool. So let's break it down a little bit further, I guess, for some of the layman creators and collectors that we actually have in the group. So why don't we give an example? Let's say I'm the creator and you're the collector, and we decided, again, knowing the project, we decided to meet in Crypto Voxels, right? Yeah. So you started from Frankfurt, I started from Center City, and then after we met up in Hero, and you had this amazing painting or oil painting that you were looking to sell, and that I was looking to sell, and you were looking to buy. What is Boson Protocol's role in that transaction, or how would it work in this sort of instance?
Sure. So obviously, buying a real world item in a sort of virtual world from an anonymous avatar is kind of has some trust issues. So what would happen is that the artist or the seller could present the images or data or metadata about the real world item, and including a price. And what Boson Protocol does is it locks up into an escrow a payment amount from the buyer or the collector, and then also deposits from the seller, which is a commitment that the seller or the artist will deliver this item, and then also a deposit from the buyer, which is the collector, which is a deposit that the collector will go through with their side of the transaction. And so what happens is that these payment amounts and commitment deposits get locked up into an escrow. Whereas with like first generation decentralized commerce, that escrow, if anything went wrong, would need to be sort of overseen by human arbitrators. With Boson Protocol, that escrow, the release of those deposits and the payment funds are overseen by a piece of game theory encoded in an NFT. So it's a sequential game. And so this game theoretically incentivizes buyer and seller to go through with the transaction and behave honestly. So what would happen is the buyer or the collector would buy this NFT, and then through our app or a white labeled app embedded within one of our sort of NFT marketplace partners application, that would then step the buyer through the redemption process, and if and when the physical item was successfully redeemed, then the seller would get paid, and depending on any kind of, if any problems or whatever, then there might be appropriate slashing of either party. But if everything went well, then both parties get their deposits returned and the seller gets paid.
So Justin, literally the problem that you've just solved is, it doesn't only pertain to primary pieces. It could be, a collector could sell to another collector, as long as the seller has a physical item for sale. Literally, he could sell it in a trustless manner in the metaverse with a limited amount of risk due to the structure of the game theory that you're applying to this transaction, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it has more practical applications other than selling within the metaverse, but really the ones that inspire me are absolutely. I mean, there are trust issues in the metaverse with anonymity, etc., and particularly when you're redeeming in the real world. So this is a pretty fundamental, we see it as like a commitment bridge. You can make a digital commitment, and there, and that commitment gets realized in the real world. I think the other important thing is I mean, it is possible to do this with a trusted bridge, right? You could have a centralized intermediary that would govern that transaction. But wherever you have a centralized intermediary, you get kind of, I guess, control points, etc. So Boson enables this in a decentralized and trust minimized manner.
So, and sorry, Justin, one last question for myself on this topic. So let's say I'm not a creator, right? I'm just a seller. And let me just say, for example, because I know that we've talked about creations, but let's say I have so right now I'm holding my Galaxy Fold 2, right?
Yeah.
The Galaxy Fold 3 comes out and I decide to sell my Galaxy Fold 2 and I bump into someone, whether that's in the metaverse or not. And I'm looking to sell this, to someone that I don't know. I could literally use the Boson Protocol to sell things other than art and collectibles, right?
Absolutely.
That's physical.
It's a completely generic, universal sort of protocol, and we're also developing what we call like the d-commerce stack. And when I say we're developing, I mean we're developing some of the core modules, but we're also fostering and funding an ecosystem of these different modules that will all work together composably, a bit like DeFi. So I mean, you absolutely, you can buy, you could from a marketplace, for example, buy and sell a real world item and rely on Boson Protocol for that exchange and coordination.
Justin, audience, you guys heard it here first. I am going to sell my Galaxy Fold 2 through Boson Protocol on CryptoVoxels when it launches. I will definitely be doing that because I have an issue. I have an issue of trying to sell these things because, again, when you go onto eBay, it's such a traumatic process sometimes, where you're providing almost a seamless and frictionless solution where I could sell my secondhand electronics, right? And they're not really secondhand because they're like 6 months or to a year old. But I'd be able to sell to anyone in the world through a trustless mechanic. That is brilliant, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, one of the areas that I studied academically were like business models, and that's how I actually got into. Well, that's how I managed to build this $1 billion Web 2 platform, and that's how I got into kind of blockchain. Is that there's this new. It's like Meccano releases a new kit that's got like a fusion, kind of engine in it, which was like tokenized and decentralized business models. So, whereas Amazon and eBay, I mean, they're like, it's a platform business model, right? You've got a closed platform where buyers and sellers are put together and coordinated by an intermediary. What Boson does is it leverages this tokenized ecosystem sort of design pattern. In fact, we directly leverage Ocean Protocol's V3 architecture, and Trent, the CTO and co-founder of Ocean, is actually our one of our earliest investors and has been an advisor, since almost day one. So, instead of a platform, we tokenize real world things as these special ERC20s that can then flow over DeFi. They can be priced on a balancer pool. They can be, you kind of interact with insurance contracts in order to provide different levels and flavors of insurance and refund protection and all of this sort of stuff. And then they slot into, for redemption, they then slot into an NFT. So you buy an NFT with one of these special flavored ERC20s, and that's when the redemption executes. So what we're talking about is, instead of a platform, what we call a liquid digital marketplace for things. So these things are just flowing all the way over the decentralized web. They're not controlled and contained within a closed platform.
Very cool. And again, I mean, I think again, you guys aren't answering, again, as you brought up earlier on, you guys aren't just answering how do you transact with anonymity in the metaverse. You guys are actually answering the broader question of how do you make a more frictionless experience for two people who don't know each other, to be able to exchange goods, maybe services, perhaps in the future, with tokens.
Yeah, not even in the future. I mean, absolutely services. I mean, that's core to the protocol.
Awesome. So with such a large idea, I'd really want to ask you, how did the idea of Boson Protocol come to fruition? And really, what do you see are the top 3 challenges it answers in the space today?
So I mean, the idea came to fruition through a series of kind of insights, a combination of insight, evolution, hitting problems, having breakthroughs, and then just really collective intelligence. I mean, we're fortunate that we've just got, even early on, we've had this incredible collective intelligence of, we were on first cohort of Outlier Ventures base camp. So Jamie Burke is one of our advisors to this day, and that whole team, maybe over a dozen of them have personally invested, which is, kind of a real endorsement for us, the Outlier team. But then Trent McConaughey, really early on, loved the project and has been super helpful. Michael Zargam, probably, top token engineer in the world. And so, the idea has really evolved with this super set of minds. And now we've just continued to sort of expand that. This is such a hard problem. And I think only perhaps in the last sort of 6 to 12 months have the components been there to actually start cracking some of these, these kind of industry/economy wide challenges. But there's certainly, the answers certainly aren't in mine and Gregor's heads. It requires this collective intelligence, and we're actually expanding that. So, we're looking to create this sort of research group between token engineering and sort of kind of Web3 knowledge and insurance and operations and more, like a multidisciplinary to kind of bring together research groups and teams to solve some of these challenges within the e-commerce stack.
Gotcha. And with such a large idea, again, there's going to be network effects, right? With the more users that come on and the more users that are using the Boson protocol. At this point in time, what kind of steps are you planning or taking to ensure that Boson protocol achieves widespread adoption and everybody knows that this is something that they can use to finally seamlessly and anonymously transact?
Well, this adoption and network effects is, like I said, I started out being a physicist. And I see network effects and business models and design patterns and tokens and ecosystems as like the physics of like businesses and of the physics of economics. So this is something we think really deeply about. We've assembled this amazing team of, ecosystem, tokenized ecosystem designers. And actually, we have a working group that also combines some really kind of great Web2 platform growth hackers and theorists and stuff. And so we're trying to understand what do these new tools that, tokens and decentralization, these new tools, what do they mean for growth hacking? What do they mean for growing platforms and networks? Because for sure, we've got these amazingly powerful tools. And so, yeah, I mean, we're thinking about that quite deeply, and then we're also executing that as a sort of a competitive/cooperative strategy. So we're looking at where we can disrupt existing sort of Web2 and centralized incumbents, but also key to a decentralized network is building in cooperation and building in incentives to participate and cooperate. So in the same way that Bitcoin has incentives for miners to mine, within Boson we're working with partners to add a sort of token engineering level to ensure that there are incentives to bring supply and demand to Boson Protocol and work with us.
As we go through this conversation, Justin, I'm seeing that, as much as you guys are a product and protocol company, you guys also are almost like a think tank or a brain trust, trying to solve these, I guess, physical to digital commercial solutions in place.
Yeah, I guess we are. I mean, I've always kind of had one foot in academia and another in just kind of blitzscaling businesses. And I just love that interplay. I mean, for all the academic stuff on platform theory and network effect and all of that, and that's amazing. Where the rubber really hits the road is the kind of practitioners and the people that kind of growth hack and use these tools. And we're trying to develop a set of tools which have, and again, we've been speaking to the token engineering community and Common Stack, where we create a set of tools that will enable Web3 to disrupt Web 2, and of course, spirit of Web 3, all of those tools will be open sourced and will be an open community encouraging that transition. So and look, that's really fun, right?
Absolutely, that's fantastic, because having been in the space for so long and having interviewed projects, whether that's on Whale FM or whether that's through just casual conversation, very often what I see in the space is you see two different types of projects. You have one project which is the go type, right? Let's do it first and then let's think later. And then they end up with a gazillion issues with their game theory or with the way that they structure the product. And then you have the other one that gets analysis paralysis. On this side, what I'm seeing is that you guys have a very good balance between the think tank type of work that you have to do to make sure that on a theoretical level, this protocol is really incentivizing the right behavior, while at the same time partnering and employing and working with the people that execute it well. So tons of kudos to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, we kind of, we're thinking as hard as we can with the afterburners fully on. So it's a lot of fun.
Amazing. And one of the things that I always like to look at in terms of projects that are fledgling in the space is, or about to burst onto the space, really are, I guess, the partnerships they're forming. And I was just wondering, are there any current partnerships in the space that you're working with you in this pre-launch stage? And really, how are they adding to or utilizing the technology that Boson Protocol is producing?
Sure. Well, yeah, we've got a heap of partnerships, some that we've announced I can run you through, and then we've got a whole lot that we're going to be announcing over the coming month in the sort of lead up to our public sale. So we're partnering with Boson Protocol for the kind of the monetization of data from the platform, and that the value there will be recycled to token holders and users. And then we've got a heap of crypto finance and DeFi partners that will be using Boson Protocol to either reward their users with real world items, or to enable their users to buy real world items directly from their platforms. So those include the likes of crypto credit cards like IDO, stablecoins like Moneyfold, as I mentioned, Boson Protocol. We've got Orion Protocol, the DeFi aggregator, and then Crucible, Lead Wallet, Gather. We've then got gaming with Royale Finance, and also gaming. We've just signed a partnership with Engine and also Crucible, and then we've got a heap of NFT art vertical partnerships that we'll be announcing over the coming weeks.
Very, very cool. And once again, that's like a list of many of the who's who in the space, and it must show, I guess, the amount of attention or the amount of impact that Boson Protocol is really going to bring.
I mean, I've had to get DocuSign. I've had to download the DocuSign app on my phone to keep up with the so I can do like kind of 2-click signing.
I think I thought I was lucky by learning how to use a PDF sign, right? So not a real digital signature, but DocuSign revolutionizes everything. We use it on a daily basis over here as well. So we've been talking about the product. We've been talking about what it does. At this very instance, and as I'm at this very instance, what does the roadmap for development and implementation look like? And how soon can individuals be able to leverage this technology?
Sure. So we we have a grand plan where we see this kind of like this sort of market landscape where there are different opportunities of different size, and then there's also a kind of different distance in terms of the build, and also how we might need to prepare from a sort of supply demand point of view to kind of capture that opportunity. So for us, it's very much starting with NFT art and gaming, and then because that these are very hot, there's ready-made supply and demand. Boson is a very obvious pipe that just plugs into supply and demand. And also, because these are pure Web3, we don't have to build any sort of fat applications on the top to do any bridging. It's a no-brainer for us. So we're working on launching our first release, which is will be some integrations in that area, and we're looking to do that within the next sort of 2 to 3 months. Beyond that, we will then be extending to DeFi, for which we'll need the ERC20, what we call Thing Token integration, which means basically, DeFi protocols and applications, if they want to integrate with Boson Protocol, then all they have to do is list an ERC20. There is no real integration. It's just kind of interoperable. And then after that, we will then be moving to support more Web 2.5 applications of, for example, bridging into centralized exchanges and credit cards, which at the moment are where all of the vast majority of crypto users are not in Web3. They're actually in Web2, congregating around exchanges. So we're looking to build out entire SDKs that will enable us to go and kind of reach those crypto users that haven't yet dared to dip their toe in the water of kind of Web3 and kind of pull them in. And then finally, the final piece of the puzzle really is then then unbundling e-commerce itself in terms of marketplaces, etc. And for that, there are a number of components that we're building ourselves. The core ones, of course, open sourcing all that tech so people can come and fork that and build their own and improve them. But to then go and disrupt and unbundle e-commerce itself.
Awesome. And so, Justin, while we've been talking, we've also been fielding a lot of questions from the Whale Discord on the Stream Text channel, and I see an overwhelming number of questions here. So I am definitely going to be sticking to the 50-50 allocation. If not, the community will gripe that I'm asking too many questions. But I do have one last question for you before I move on to some of the AMA or community questions that have come in. Recently when we've looked at the NFT space, and if you ask anyone who has been in the NFT space from the last 12 to 24 months, we've really thought that, this thing would blow up maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years. But that 2 year or 3 year timeline all of a sudden decided to shrink to last week, right? Whether that's in the media or whether that's on social media, whether you're in Clubhouse where it's a 24-hour NFT party, it seems that NFTs are all the rage right now. So how do you see Boson Protocol growing and developing within the NFT future? And really, what does the end game for Boson Protocol within this new ecosystem look like to you?
Okay, so, I mean, as I said, I kind of got this bit of a physics brain where I see things. So I see the thing that we're creating, this metaverse, as this sort of like simulated universe, if you like. And if it's a blockchain powered metaverse, then hash functions provide this one-way direction where you can kind of like the arrow of time. And then like the NFTs provide this permanence, this kind of not just scarcity, but it's this unique non-fungibility that you find in everyday objects. But I think that a lot of people sort of see NFTs as like static objects, like a piece of art. Of course, there's all this whole generative art stuff, but static objects. And of course, in the real world, many objects are not static, right? And so I think Boson's place in that is that we are a stateful, kind of dynamic objects that actually perform roles. But broader than that. So that's our kind of place in NFTs, I think, is that we are NFTs that function and have state. And I think you're going to see a lot more logic and programmability. And in the same way as you've got this composability and interoperability within DeFi and, running on smart contracts, with the ERC20s, I think NFTs, you're going to see a lot more of that as well. But I actually think, Boson's place, our vision for Boson anyway, is not just this kind of like mechanism for unbundling e-commerce, but actually this deeper thing of being able to have some sort of a trust bridge between the metaverse and the universe, right? So if you make a commitment in the metaverse, you have a degree of assurance that that commitment will be realized in the universe, or at least if it's not, that the parties have got skin in the game and they've got strong incentives to behave in a certain way. And I think that that's a kind of piece of basic plumbing that's going to be joining metaverse and universe. And I just think this thing we see increasingly, the boundaries between what's physical and what's digital are just going to become blurred, right? In the same way, humans now, it's normal to see this cloud of digital information with Twitter and LinkedIn and have it all kind of attached to them. And I think these two worlds are just going to become increasingly, the dividing line will become blurred. And I think Boson is going to become a core piece of plumbing that's going to enable that.
Excellent question, my friend. And, as we've been going through these questions, I couldn't be even more for the bull case on a protocol that could actually set up that plumbing. Fully agreed with you. I mean, I've been on a lot of podcasts recently, and, very much often I've told many of the interviewers that the digitalization of lifestyle, the digitalization of assets, the digitalization of life as a whole is coming, and it's unstoppable. And I can't wait to see Boson Protocol be a core part of that plumbing. So
I would switch that on its head as well. I think the digitalization of the universe and the physicalization of the metaverse.
There you go. And my physical Galaxy Fold 2 is going to go into the digital metaverse and re-emerge physical again for someone across the other side of the globe pretty soon, right?
Absolutely. We're going to do it.
Hell yeah. So before I get any criticisms from the community, what I would like to do, and again, Justin is here with me in the back room, so he gets a preview in terms of how many of these questions are coming in. We'll use the remaining time today to really answer some of the questions that we have from the community, if that's okay with you. Are you ready for this, Justin?
I am ready, yes.
All right, we got a ton of them. All right. So, and again, please understand that a lot of our audience, they're mainly collectors and they're creators. So the knowledge of the exact protocols and the way that Boson Protocol will function, I think this will give us a very good opportunity to clarify some of those points. So I guess the first question that we have here, and once again, we can take it back or answer it in a question in a way that will make proper context. But the asker is asking, will the physical assets be available for delivery worldwide in case of the products?
Yes, absolutely. One of the core modules that we are developing is a module, a dispatch module that will plug into worldwide delivery services, and we'll be open sourcing that code. So yeah, I mean, it's going to cover the major sort of services. But then let's say you live in India or something and there's a local, then that code can just be repurposed and someone can come and rebuild that module and also have network rewards for bringing supply and demand to the protocol.
Very cool. So essentially the protocol will not only facilitate the commercial transaction, but you have a piece in there that will also provide transparency on the logistical aspects of it. Is that what I'm hearing?
The core protocol is kind of performs like some core coordination, but the whole, and that's why we've kind of got the world's, seven of them, arguably the world's number one tokenized ecosystem designers, is that we are fostering and also will be funding through the D-Commerce DAO a whole stack of components on top, but we are going to seed that stack and with some core components, and one of them is a dispatch module.
Very cool. The next question, I think it is something that we touched on, but maybe you could give a brief summary on the response. But what was the fundamental need that inspired Boson Protocol, and what is your long-term projection?
So, for me, the way we came up with Boson Protocol was really a kind of natural progression from the fact that I'd taken a business that was like physical and plastic and paper vouchers and built this $1 billion digital platform for digital vouchers, but it was a centralized platform. And I saw the need for a capture resistant public infrastructure that could be built on a blockchain that would be non-extractionary. And so that was the need, and also seeing that platforms and commerce, that if we carry on the way we are, that we're going to see like the total capture of commerce by one or few intermediaries. So we blockchain and decentralized technology gives us a chance to lay this public infrastructure and have a more equitable commerce economy.
Perfect. The third question that we have from the audience is, will this be available with fiat? So will you have a fiat on-ramp over time as well? If you do have a fiat on-ramp, or if people are using fiat, how will you handle chargeback situations?
So absolutely. The fiat on-ramps and off-ramps will be another core module. Closely aligned to those are also some kind of credit modules, and we're working with some key partners there to enable financing of these vouchers, and yes, also on and off ramping. Those are going to be key, particularly as we move beyond Web 3 to Web 2, and we've got a number of these particular actor types that will enable this and be rewarded for that. And what was there a second part there? Sorry.
How will you handle chargeback situations?
So the core protocol, once the redemption is signed, there is the payment is sent to the seller in an irreversible manner. However, we're also working with a number of decentralized insurance providers, and we have an ongoing project there where things such as refund protection and where buyers can take out an insurance with an insurance provider who will assess the risk of a seller and then provide protection to the buyer in the form of a refund, or if necessary. So again, whereas with like an Amazon or e-commerce, all of these services are bundled within a single intermediary, we're unbundling them and then exposing them to specialized kind of modules.
That is so cool, Justin. You're literally looking at the entire value chain from seller to buyer, and you're decentralizing and, like you said, bundling. Unbundling every single aspect of it, so that it becomes this ability to have a trustless and anonymous transaction. Transaction base.
And the
That's
key
amazing.
is value sharing, and it's the key is that you build the core protocol must incentivize others to come and build, because for example, if you build this insurance module, there are network rewards and there's value there to be shared in de-risking the system, and so charging a buyer a fee that will insure them against seller risk, and passing the assessment of risk over to and actors that specialize in risk.
Perfect. And I actually have another question for you, but we'll leave it till because I did see a very similar question that I'm really interested in as well. But we'll get there. We'll get there in a tiny bit. The next question we have for you: can there be a third party included in Boson Protocol, say a verifier who verifies the deliverable, or is this handled in the existing flow itself? Right. And you talked a lot about game theory, so but please go ahead and I'd love to hear your answer on that one.
I mean, currently, as we're designed currently, and need to make one thing clear as well, is that the core protocol is not static. I mean, it's a live economic experiment by the input of a number of people, including Dr. Akaki, who's this like kind of top algorithmic game theorist, and so the protocol itself will also be evolving, albeit to a slower pace than the applications on top. But so there is an ability for the buyer to delegate their signing authority to a third party, which could be FedEx, for example. So if you've got a pair, if you've got your Galaxy phone, and you may choose that if FedEx says it's been delivered, that you trust that, and you will take the risk on that FedEx is a genuine. You may not choose to accept that with a diamond ring. With a diamond ring, you may decide that you're going to pick it up in person, or that you want a one-time password closed loop or whatever. So yeah, the protocol enables buyers to delegate in that way. And then also there is, there will be an arbitrated escalation pathway as well, out of the just the game theory. So you will be able to escalate. And again, there's a number of different commercial models of how that might work, including being insured for that versus paying for that.
Gotcha. And I brought up
this is a pretty core component of spreading the risk and taking the risk out of the system and risk assessment. And I think we're seeing that all across DeFi and all across the decentralized systems where insurance is this increasingly important glue.
Excellent. And I brought up this page on your website that talks about oracles, right? So easily connecting the smart contracts to the data. When just adding on to that answer, so are we talking about literally, in terms of verifying the deliverable? Are we talking about using an oracle to track a tracking number, and if you have the FedEx website or tracking website saying that there's a confirmed delivery, that would initiate the final part of the transaction, which is the transfer of fiat or the transfer of crypto to the seller?
Well, we are going to be using oracles in a whole range of ways for connecting Boson. So when we connect Boson Protocol to an NFT art marketplace, there is one method is an oracle. When we connect to a dispatch courier provider, one method is an oracle. But actually, what we were talking about here is that at a high level, you could think of Boson Protocol as a real world asset oracle. So in the same way that blockchains can't trust real world data, and so you need an oracle to give you to decentralize that trust and give more assurance. Likewise, blockchains can't trust whether a real world asset transfer has happened. So for example, if you tokenize an item and then I buy that token, I can't, if you sold me the token for your phone, I can't trust that if I buy that token, you're actually going to give me the phone as well. And so that's the problem that Boson Protocol solves in terms of ensuring that I can initiate the transaction and put some money into escrow, knowing that either I will get the phone or my money back. And if you don't deliver the phone, then you will be penalized.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And as we move on through these questions, I know some of them will be relatively short answers. I do want to get through all of them. And wow, I would just want to thank the audience. Justin, you're extremely popular, my friend. The questions just keep coming. But I think some of these we are going to be able to answer very quickly. The first one being, does the physical object get held in escrow too?
No. No, it's only the funds that get held in escrow.
So essentially what you're doing is you're using game theory and funds from the buyer as well as funds from the seller to incentivize that the object eventually, the correct and proper object eventually gets into the hands of the buyer without having the physical object in escrow, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Gotcha. Another question, moving on, next question. What are the short-term ideas, or I guess short-term milestones for Boson Protocol?
So we're launching our public zone in about a month, and then the following month we will be launching our first application for the NFT art and gaming space, and then a couple of months later we're extending to DeFi and with ERC20 and DeFi compatibility. A couple of months after that we then connect with Web 2.5. And then a couple of months after that, we're then going to be bridging into Web 2 and disrupting e-commerce.
That sounds like a very busy 2021 for you guys.
Yeah.
Next question says, eBay has a problem that they nearly always believe or put the power with the buyer. How are, I guess, they're asking how does that work in this case with a physical transaction too? But I guess the overall, I think the overarching question that they're trying to ask is how do you provide equality to the buyer and the seller in your protocol?
So, I mean, look, essentially, it's the same problem that we're solving in a different way, and that having the buyer sign for the redemption is a core part of it, but also having specialist insurance, unbundling the assessment of whether an item was delivered to quality, unbundling that from the intermediary, kind of removes this incentive mismatch that an intermediary has a strong incentive to side with one side or another, whereas an insurer being this kind of more neutral party and with specifically designed to assess risk, is a more incentive aligned solution for that. So it's still fundamentally the same underlying problem. And the other thing is that we offer varying degrees of redemption kind of security, from being able to physically collect in person your super high value items to being able to delegate trust for where users feel that's appropriate.
Awesome. The next question coming in says, and I know we talked about a public sale, right? And I do apologize to the audience. You guys have so many questions, and which is brilliant. I'm going to pick out those that are things that we haven't spoken about. So no offense to any of the audience who have submitted questions. So we talked about a public sale, my friend. And here's the direct question. Is there any plans to release a Boson Protocol token? And I have some follow-up questions from the audience on this after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Boson token is absolutely core to coordinating all the value flows in our ecosystem. So, I mean, the purpose of the Boson token is number one, that there is a what's called like a minimally extractive fee for coordinating buyer and seller. Also, the data is monetized via an integration with Ocean Protocol. The difference being that all of that value, instead of going up to, say, Jeff Bezos or someone, is actually sort of recycled within the protocol and used to incentivize this ecosystem of players.
Excellent. And you actually touched on one of the latest questions that came in. And why don't we talk about that a tiny bit? Because this is a really interesting point for myself. One of the reasons why you won't find my real name on LinkedIn, you won't find my real name on Facebook, you won't find my real name on any social media platform, is because I always, I don't want to give out my data to, social media platforms, or if I can avoid it, registering with other larger platforms. The question was, Amazon has a lot of analytic data that gives them the edge. Will data like that become public data from you guys to help the market from both a seller and buyer's perspective?
Yeah, so a big, Amazon does two things, right? It coordinates transactions between buyers and sellers. And of course, we've covered that a lot. But it also then takes that data and uses it to be able to target customers, but also allegedly by the European government, European Union most recently, it also uses that to unfairly compete with the businesses that have to use its platform. So it uses that understanding buyer behavior and preferences so that it can build its own competing products, or as in recently was alleged in India, benefit larger sellers over smaller sellers. And so we think that's wrong, and we think that endangers consumers, firms, and even governments. And so Boson Protocol will enable this kind of data commons that all businesses and sellers can access in a fair and equitable way, and is a real sort of level playing field in terms of the use of that data. And of course, that data is shared in an entirely voluntary way, and through our integration with the kind of amazing tech of Ocean Protocol, that the sovereignty of that data is preserved.
Amazing. You're democratizing and you're giving the information back to the people, rather than letting just one party benefit from it. That is totally and fully in the spirit of decentralization and blockchain. Love it. Moving back to talking about the Boson token, and again, when people support projects, I always give people a 4-point matrix in order to evaluate projects that are being launched, right? Because we want to make sure that we're committing and we're doing everything for a project that will last the long term. The first question here goes to, how is the Boson Protocol being funded besides the upcoming ICO or the upcoming token sale?
Okay, so in terms of funding, then I think what we're talking about here is sort of sustainability.
Correct.
So we are following very much Trent McConaughey from Ocean's sort of Web3 sustainability loop. So what happens is that some of the funds from the protocol are recycled back into a DAO, and that DAO is then used to fund the ongoing development of the protocol, but then also applications on top that are going to drive more usage and therefore more kind of aggregation of fees, etc. So there's this kind of positive feedback loop there in terms of using some of the proceeds to fund further growth, which creates an upward spiral.
Fantastic. And Justin, you're already getting fans in here because people are already asking how they can support the project. Congratulations, my friend. But here's one of the questions. Is there a way for normal users that can help provide liquidity or anything else to help get this to a success, such as staking or liquidity pool provision, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be, this is why we've got one of the best token engineering teams in the world, and this is the stuff they're building and working on. But to give you a flavor, when in my kind of previous role with a centralized platform, we used to have teams of agents that would be really famously, I had a guy in Sao Paulo that just went and tied up all of these different merchants and got a commission for the transactions that came via the merchants he'd onboarded and earned a fortune. I think he kind of pretty much retired, and that model is a really powerful, a distributed network of agents going and finding supply to onboard for the platform. So we will be implementing a supply farming program, which is similar, where if you go and onboard merchants and you go and you find merchants early that are selling great products and services that people love, that are popular and high quality, then you stake behind those, it's a kind of curation market, then what will happen is that you stand to make a significant upside from going and discovering products. So it's like a kind of product hunt, right? And there's going to be this, other than we will have staking programs, etc., which will be kind of pretty familiar to everyone. But this kind of supply farming, I think, is one of the most exciting things, because we're basically going to engage the world, our community, to go and find the best, coolest products and then help bring those onto Boson Protocol. And the degree to which they're successful at doing that is there's an upside in terms of them then get benefiting from this bonding curve.
You just gamified the global sourcing game, my friend.
Absolutely.
It seems like. It sounds amazing. Moving on to the next question. I know that we have 5 minutes left, so probably we'll take about 3 more questions before we do have to let Justin on his way. Again, I do want to make sure that we're spending a good 1 hour asking all the important questions so that you guys can understand more about the project. But moving on to the last 3 questions here. How will physical transfer or transfer of physical work work? Will it be possible to do it without giving your address directly to the seller?
Yes, absolutely. So, for example, we will enable things like click and collect, and we're looking to integrate with various collection points and lockers where you won't have to do that. I mean, I think whenever if if you're asking for someone to deliver to your address, then I think there's a logical challenge with how they would find that address if they didn't have it. But so yes, but we will be, to the extent logically possible, supporting, anonymity in that regard. Yeah.
So there could be actually literally a day, and again, I know it's a very complex question to answer, but there could literally be a day where I could buy things and I wouldn't need to give my contact information, which again, a lot of these stores, a lot of these sellers use for additional marketing initiatives. Granted now that I definitely won't have to most likely won't have to provide my email address, right? Oh, maybe I will have to be
Right.
due to shipping information.
No, I mean, that absolutely is a possibility as well. And, we also have a lot of research happening in the team on use of sort of privacy, and zero knowledge technologies as well. So where, data could be, kind of taken in and used, but always kind of like cryptographically secured against further, onward use, etc. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of research, primary and looking at where we are, with other great teams that are researching these areas and how we could integrate these into the protocol or have them as modules.
Gotcha. The next question, the second to last question that we have here, and you talked about games and art. One of the questions we have is, for games, how will that work with selling? Is it to make a system to engine build auction houses, PR games, or is it to make one auction house for all games? I guess they're looking for more clarity on how Boson Protocol would interact with game assets.
Sure. So we have signed a number of partnerships with, for example, it's two projects. One is Crucible, another one is Engine, who kind of plug into games and provide sort of plugins and interfaces. And so, the way it would work from a user or player point of view is that you could win an in-game item, or you could go to an in-game store, and so you could either win an in-game item and receive this NFT, or you could go to an in-game store and buy an NFT. But instead of that NFT being like a digital thing, it would actually be redeemable for a real world item. So, for example, you could kind of, I don't know, you could get to a certain level in a game, and it would enable you to go and buy this crazy pair of Nike trainers, which you could only get if you'd kind of got to this particular level. And you buy that NFT, and then you could go into the Nike store and redeem them, and all of that trustlessly.
Very cool. So again, you're building that bridge from the digital to the physical, and back to the digital and back to the physical again. Amazing. The last question that we have today, and we're 1 minute on the countdown, I think it's a simple question, but again, it just shows the amount of interest that people have in your project, because they've already gone to your website and they've already tried to find out about more information. Can we be able to read the light paper and white paper at some point without giving our email? While we are pre-subscribed?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I can have that enabled pretty soon. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I think that's just, Justin, I think that's just a testament to how much people have enjoyed this interview. And before we end off, where can people reach you, and how can they learn more about the project?
So absolutely, the website, bosonprotocol.io. But I would encourage everyone to come and join our Telegram group at Boson Protocol, which is just like a great place for discussion and for keeping up to date with the news.
Absolutely. So over here, guys, if you go to bosonprotocol.io, bosonprotocol.io, basically in the very front part over here, you'll see that you have a Telegram link, so you can hop into there, so you can hop into the Telegram group and get the latest updates on this very amazing and very revolutionary product. Justin, I know that this conversation has been a long-term coming. It has been so heartwarming to see how much progress has been made, as well as the scope and the breadth of challenges that you guys are trying to answer, not only through smart contracts, but also through, genuine game theory. right? To incentivize the right behaviors from people so that, we can finally transact relatively anonymously, in the digital world to the physical and building bridges back and forth. I want to really thank you for your time. I know you're an extremely busy person. So thank you very much for being the very first guest on this first installment of Whale FM, The Investors. We wish you all the very best, and we do hope that you'll come back on in the future to give us an update.
Thanks, Whale. It's been an absolute blast. And yes, I'd love to come back.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody did enjoy that. There is much more to come. Again, reach out to Boson Protocol, go to their website, go to their Telegram, find out more about the projects, and do remember that they do have a public sale upcoming. Thank you, everybody, for watching tonight, and we will speak to you soon. DC, we can take it away. Justin, thanks again, man.
Thanks. Really enjoyed it.